Welcome to Taking the Next Steps to 2014. This is the law panel. I'm very happy to see all of you here. Some familiar faces and a lot of new ones too. So I'm glad I'm getting to connect with all of you today, for those of you who haven't connected with UCIL in the past. So before we get started, I wanted to introduce myself, and also because I'm an attorney, tell you a little bit about my background. I'm Maria Vertuno. I'm the program director of UChicago Careers in Law. This past fall, I started my second year at the university. I graduated from Loyola University Chicago in 1990, got a bachelor's in political science, went straight into law school after that, and got my JD from the University of Notre Dame in 1993. I see that leak in there too, so nobody sit in the front row. So after that, I am a Chicago native. I was raised here, came back to Chicago to practice law, and I spent 15 years as a litigator here in Chicago, primarily defending doctors and hospitals in medical malpractice cases. So I worked at two smaller firms, each about 30 attorneys for 3 years each, and then went to a 100-lawyer firm after that, where I practiced for a number of years, became a partner there, and when I resigned from the partnership back in 2008, I remained on of counsel. So even though I'm now working full-time in higher ed, I still maintain a relationship with my law firm, and I'm still friends and close colleagues with that bunch of folks. So when I was winding down my practice back in the mid to late 2000s, I started teaching part-time at DePaul Law School. I taught legal writing there for a few years in the evening. Moved downstate to central Illinois, Peoria, where my husband is a native, so he also a lawyer. We went down there for personal reasons for our family, but professional reasons for Paul as well. And I ended up starting a pre-law program at Bradley University in Peoria. Did that for about 3.5 years, and then we came back to Chicago, and I ended up stepping into this role about 1.5 years ago. So that's my story. Any of you who haven't come in to see me yet, please do sometime, and we'll talk about law as a career. What I want to do next is have each of our esteemed panelists introduce themselves. So they are going to give you an idea of who they are, where they've come from, and what their careers have been like. I did want to let you guys know that one of our panelists, Irene Dimkar, was not able to make it today, so I know you guys saw her in our program. Unfortunately, she will not be joining us. So we've got the four plus me this afternoon. So we're going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes on introductions. I'll go into my series of questions that I have for the panelists, and then I will open it up to the group of students after that, so you guys can have a chance to ask your questions. So, Dave, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is David Navarro. I am currently an Assistant Attorney General at the Illinois Attorney General's Office, the Public Integrity Bureau, the acting bureau chief right now. I am a 1990 graduate of the university college, so that means I was there in the 80s, I think, or maybe before some of you guys were born. I attended the U of C. I graduated there in 90, went to the University of Iowa College of Law, graduated directly from college, and graduated there in 93. From there, I went directly to work for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, which is the local prosecutor's office here in the Chicago area. At the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, if any of you are familiar with it, it's, if not the largest, I think it's the second largest prosecutor's office in the nation. You run through assignments all the way from appellate advocacy through misdemeanors, through felonies, into special prosecutions. I left the State's Attorney's Office in 2009. When I left there, I was head of the Professional Standards Unit, Police Corruption Unit. We're specializing in police corruption cases and excessive force cases, also reviewing officer-involved shootings, which is a kind of specialized area of the law. Prior to that, I had prosecuted the whole range of felony offenses, from your retail thefts to homicides. At the Attorney General's Office, I'm in the Public Integrity Bureau there, doing criminal prosecutions also. There, I have cases in Cook County, but our jurisdiction is broader, it's statewide. This Monday I've got a case in Williamson County, which is down towards the southern tip of Illinois. I've come to realize just how big this state is, and how the law is, the same law in this state is applied very differently from county to county. In between this, I took a short break and did some criminal defense work, and got to see the bench from the other side of the table and talked to some of my counterparts about doing defense work. I don't know, some of our luncheon panelists were do defense work, so I got to talk to them about wearing the dark hat for a little while. But currently I've been at the Attorney General's office for about 3.5 years, and I work with Chris, who I follow up after me.
Hi, my name's Chris Kim, and as Dave mentioned, I'm an assistant attorney general too. We're in different departments, but I'm part of the special litigation bureau. So, but my trajectory to becoming a lawyer has been a little bit different. I actually was out almost 5 to 6 years after the U of C. I concentrated in econ and English while here, and I have some great stories about Professor Stephen Levitt if you want to talk to me about him. No, after finishing graduation here, after graduating here, I ended up working at Leo Burnett. So I don't know if you're familiar with Leo Burnett, but it's a huge advertising firm, part of the Publicis Group. They're located right here. I was with them for 5 years working on, McDonald's accounts, Viacom, all sorts of things. And I was in their digital media group. And after 5 years, I decided to go to law school. I went to law school in Minnesota, in part because I had a big interest in pro bono government work, and Minnesota sort of specializes in that area. It's the Walter Mondale Law School. So I was there, did a brief externship with the Federal Trade Commission, did my short summer associateship at Neil Gerber Eisenberg, but then and then worked at a pro bono firm for a little while, defending homeowners against big banks who were trying to foreclose on them, and then was invited to join the Attorney General's office. So briefly, I think, I haven't been at the AG's office as long. I've been there for about a little over 2 years now. And our work primarily is in the False Claims Act. So what that really means is these are a lot of cases that are sealed. So these are cases that the public doesn't know about. These are cases that are brought forward by a whistleblower who believes that there's fraud being taken against the government. It can be against the United States, it can be against multiple states, but then that whistleblower will file the complaint under seal, and then we're brought notice to that case. And then we investigate the matter. We might be in front of federal court, we might be in front of state court, but we primarily are on the civil side. And we investigate those matters, and then we either decide whether we want to intervene, which means we take control of the case, and we litigate it, and then it becomes unsealed, and then it winds up, in the paper or whatnot, and then you start reading about it. Or we alternatively try to settle the matter if we think that's a better resolution for whoever the defendant is that's involved in that case. So that's it, a little bit about me.
Hello, everybody. My name is Laurie Silvestri. I'm an attorney here in Chicago. I practice in business litigation. About 20 years ago now, I went out on my own, left a small to medium-sized law firm here in Chicago and started my own office. I primarily represent small businesses, family-owned businesses, and much the type of businesses you probably patronize, cleaners and banks and paving companies, trucking company. I have a lot of t-shirts from my clients they give me when they celebrate their family's anniversaries, 50 years in business, whatever. It has some challenges because you're catering to a small business community and what you can charge, and it's very end result focused. Is it worthwhile or not to sue? But basically what I do is I file lawsuits and defend people in court. Mainly here downtown Chicago Daily Center. Like I said, I've done that for quite a while now. But being out on my own has given me the opportunity to do some other things that I like to do as well, besides practicing law day to day, which is I'm also an adjunct instructor at Chicago Kent College of Law. They're located downtown. So I teach a legal writing class to second-year students. I've done that for quite a long time now. They keep asking me back, and I enjoy working with the students. Before that, I worked at a medium-sized law firm. That's where I got my experience. It allowed me to be able to go out on my own and practice and attract clients and so forth. And before that, right out of law school, I worked for 2 years for the appellate court They were located in Elgin, and you wrote decisions and memorandum for the appellate court justices. It was kind of a 2-year stint that a lot of law students do to get the writing experience and the exposure to different areas of law, so you can kind of figure out what area of law you'd like to go into based on the different opinions you were working on. I graduated from Chicago-Kent College of Law. Before that, I went to University of Chicago. I graduated there in 1982. I took 1 year off. Well, I actually finished college early. My concentration was behavioral sciences. At lunch, I learned that there's no such thing as behavioral science major at the school, but it was today, but there are other things that kind of touch on that. There was no pre-law program at UC. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer when I was in college, but I had the luxury of taking whatever major I wanted because they said at the time, and it's true, you can major in anything you'd like and still go to law school, so I chose behavioral sciences, which really appealed to me. But I was able to finish that curriculum early, and that gave me a chance to work full-time in a law firm, because even though I had wanted to become a lawyer since as long as I can remember, I really didn't have any experience talking to lawyers or working in a law firm or anything. So that year off I used to work in a law firm downtown and really did just like grunt work. But I got to see what it might be like later as an attorney, and so I'm glad I did that. But that pretty much sums up my history. So I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, can you hear me? Is this okay? All right, my name is Judith Munson, and I am an academic. I teach public health, emergency law, domestic and international at John Marshall Law School and at a law school in the Czech Republic and at other EU locations and to associations there in the European Union. It's quite a journey for me to go from an undergraduate here, majoring in history at the University of Chicago, to then getting a law degree at Chicago-Kent College of Law, and then taking jobs in the public health sector because of a professor I had at Chicago-Kent. Her name was Dr. Rowene Brown, and she was the medical director at Cook County Hospital. And she got a law degree because of the different kinds of cases she saw coming before her. Children who were abused, and there was no mechanism at that time for dealing with them. People who would come in, who would have some addiction. She needed to have some legal grounding for the work that she was doing and that her physicians at Cook County Hospital were doing. So she went to law school, and she went to Chicago-Kent College of Law. So she was the doctor who had a law degree, and she wanted to make sure that those messages of what she had found missing in the legal sector were brought to the attention of those who could make a difference. So she started teaching Saturday mornings at Chicago-Kent College of Law, and she started a legal mechanism for bringing these issues to the state legislature to get them addressed legislatively so that there would be some recourse for physicians who were encountering these kinds of issues. Her seminar was called Medical Legal Issues, and it was like one of the very first medical legal issues courses taught at law schools across the country. She was a groundbreaker. It was an amazing experience for me, and it was the beginning of my career in public health. I wanted to follow some of the issues that had been brought to our attention on those Saturday morning seminars. So my first job was at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and I was in charge of the Black Lung Litigation Unit. It was a series of coal miner cases where the coal miners would have this pneumoconiosis. It was a very severe lung disease that resulted from the work there. And legislation had been passed at the federal level to deal with those issues. So that was my first job. I enjoyed it, but then my children were getting older. And by older, I mean they were like 8 and 9, and they were starting to participate in after-school sports. So I needed to be closer to home. It was an hour for me to get into the city of Chicago. So I took a job at the DuPage County Health Department. And it was there that I learned what public health is really all about. And it was there that I found out the importance of the vaccination programs, the most important action that public health can take for the population is to make sure that everybody gets their vaccinations and is protected from the diseases that had been running rampant throughout history. I also learned that local health departments are the victims of local political intrigues. And anytime anybody had an opportunity to snare some of the money from the local health department, they would do so. And they never had the kind of legal representation that would bring that to the attention of the authorities so that that wouldn't happen anymore. So I started doing these presentations on what the legal recourse was for local health departments. The state health department saw this and said, you know, maybe you could come work for us and then you could take those messages statewide. So it was that opportunity to go from the federal level, I was then at the local level, and the state health department asked me to come to be there. It was there when, working downtown at the State of Illinois building, that the Goodman Theater was putting on a play called Miss Evers' Boys. I went to the play because we had a subscription to the series. That was the first time that I had heard of the Tuskegee Institute study that had to do with the 30-year-long study of black men who had syphilis. And even though penicillin was invented and was implemented nationwide, the men in the Tuskegee Institute study didn't get the benefit of it because they were in this public health study conducted by the Centers for Disease Control. And I had been in public health my entire career and I'd never heard of it. I was stunned when someone asked me at the School of Medicine in Peoria to give a lecture, because I knew the woman who was in charge of the public health program there. She said, could you come and give some presentation about the legal side of public health to these medical students? The session I prepared was on the Tuskegee Institute study, and once it was exposed, the legal reforms that resulted from it, which were massive. Congress was outraged, and they went into this massive retooling of the way studies are conducted on individuals, on human subjects. So this massive legal reform had resulted. And so it was my opportunity to bring it to the attention of those people who were going to be in the field so that they knew about it without having to go to a play, which was then made into a movie. If you have a chance to see it, or rent it, or download it, or have it mainstreamed into your TV from Netflix, it's Miss Evers' Boys. And it's something that we should all know as citizens that was going on in our country. So that was my first taste of academia. And when I had an opportunity to go to the University of Illinois School of Public Health and take a position there, I took it because I was going to have an opportunity to be in academia then. It was like a year later when the anthrax attacks occurred in our country, right after the attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City in the fall of 2001. The first bioterrorism events in this country took place. 19 cases, 5 deaths. I see people shaking their head, yes, you know about it. It's still a part of what you lived through. Public health did not have the legal authorities to respond in a way that would have been fast and therapeutic. The local health department director in Palm Beach County did not have the authority to close the building where the first victim had worked and to have everybody who worked in that same building tested before they could leave. She did not. It was a horrifying, embarrassing moment for public health, and we needed to do something about it. Since I had been one of the very few attorneys who had spent her entire career in public health, I got a call from the Centers for Disease Control. And so immediately we went into retooling the laws into model acts. We then promulgated, we didn't promulgate them. We prepared them and we took them from state to say, please consider implementing these reforms in your state. Shortly after we had started that, it was 2 years later in 2003 when the SARS pandemic hit. it wasn't a pandemic, epidemic hit internationally. We had never seen this disease before. It was brand new. We thought we had conquered chronic disease, infectious diseases, and that we could concentrate on chronic diseases, and there was this brand new thing, SARS. It didn't even have a name. SARS was only the first letter of each of the words that described it, severe acute respiratory syndrome. Immediately, the World Health Organization went into a massive retooling of the international treaty that governs the way infectious diseases are handled around the globe. When that was finished, that's when I started teaching those reforms domestically and internationally at law schools here and in the European Union. I think I've taken more of my time. I'll shut up now. Thank you very much.
Okay, so when I talk to students, a lot of times people have this kind of general sense that they want to go to law school, but they're not entirely sure why. And I'd like each of you to maybe just very briefly touch on what it was that motivated you to go to law school back as an undergrad, or maybe when you'd been out of school for a little bit, so students can get a sense of whether or not they're moving in the right direction. So David, why don't we start with you?
I was an English major. I don't know how many English majors we have here. Any? So a few, right? So you're wondering, like, what am I going to do with an English major? And so there I was in '86, wondering what I was going to do with an English major, or '90, when you graduated. And so were my parents. Like why weren't you an econ major or something more practical? Law school was one of the things I considered. I considered going on for my master's. I knew that I wanted to go on and continue studying. As I talked to other people that were practiced or were actually lawyers, I thought that this was something that was going to interest me. Now, I did not have the level, I didn't go to one of these taking the next step presentations. I wish I had. I wish there was something like this in place. So I would have come into it more informed. As it turned out, it was the right career choice for me, and I was very glad that I went this route. But I would stress to you to really give thought to what as you think about this. I think that there was some discussion about there's internship opportunities or is it shadowing or
job shadowing?
Job shadowing. Mm-hmm. Take advantage. If you have an opportunity to do that, do that. I did a job shadowing my first break at law school, Christmas break at Iowa, at a prosecutor's at the Cook County State's Attorney's office, and that really cemented for me that I knew that's where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. But if you can find that out before you even go to law school, you will possibly roll out being among one of the dissatisfied lawyers that you run into every now and then, who are not happy in the area that they've chosen, and maybe would have been better suited going into a different area. It is not. I don't want to come up here and say, "Hi, welcome to the presentation on how to become a lawyer." Don't do it. I don't want to say that, but just I would say give thought to it, and if there's avail yourself of the programs that Maria has and will tell you about, because they would be very helpful to you.
Yeah, and I agree with Dave. I'm trying to think when the whole law school thing. For me, I'd done a lot of debate all throughout high school, and so law school was. I have no lawyers in my family. So I didn't even know a lawyer until I think second year of college when I was talking to my advisor about it. I just kind of threw it out there. I hadn't even mentioned it during the original orientation process. I think, for me, the law school aspect was a strong interest in kind of policy discussions and trying to be able to kind of change the way we think about how we do things. And the law is kind of where everything sort of starts with that. So that was always in the back of my mind. I think, I was a Metcalf Fellow. I did that my third year in the college. I worked with the Northeastern Illinois Planning Commission. It was kind of a strange set of circumstances that led me there. Because I had actually, of all things, had applied for an internship with Leo Burnett at the time. but Leo Burnett's internship fell through because the advertising industry at the time was doing poorly. So I got the call that program had been scrapped. But then, oddly enough, I was pushed into a government internship through Metcalf. So I think doing that kind of thing, where if you're interested in either pro bono work or whatnot, trying to step into those areas where you can meet with people and try to really get an understanding of what that field is like is important. When it comes to the legal industry, when I was at Leo Burnett, I did encounter a lot of lawyers because all sorts of creative ideas we crafted still ultimately needed the lawyer's stamp of approval for us to do it. And in doing that, I got to know a lot of incredibly talented, intelligent people who were not just doing legal work, but were also involved in all sorts of other things. And it turned out that some of them ended up going into government practice, and I stay in touch with some of them still. And I think that's what sort of led me down this idea of, there's great opportunity, but there's also a lot of good work that can be done if you're involved in pro bono legal work, which is why I, ended up going to law school. And the thought never really quite occurred to me, I think, that I was still going to go. I think, at some point, my advice would be, if you guys are thinking about law school, I think it is important not to go directly through. I think there are advantages to doing that, but I think it's worthwhile in terms of being able to explore some other opportunities, or some other interests or burning passions that you guys have inside. Because as David pointed out, I do know some of my friends who went straight through. And they don't necessarily regret that they went straight to law school, but they always sort of have that what if sort of floating on the right side of their brain, that, man, if I had not gone to law school, some of the things that I could have tried. And once you come out of law school, that's 3 years of your life. And you might soon find that you're either married or you have kids. Your opportunities will start to not necessarily dwindle, but your ability to do things like that are going to be more limited as time goes on. So I would definitely recommend that you take the time to explore some other fields before you venture off into law school.
Well, I'm one of those people who knew as soon as they found out what a lawyer was that they wanted to be one. I think I was in 6th grade when I decided that, well, that's what I really want to do. My parents kind of trace it back to when I was a little kid, always screaming against my sisters, saying, "It's not fair, it's not fair." And so, I'd be out there later being a lawyer, is no surprise, saying, "Something's not fair, Judge. I want this for my client, I want that for my client." But that being said, I wouldn't have become a lawyer, and I tell my students this, if you don't want to be a lawyer. That's so fundamental, but it's such a sacrifice financially, and as Chris said about the 3 years of your life that you could be doing other things, and the job market being so iffy, that if you don't want to be a lawyer, don't go to law school to become one. So how do you know whether you want to be a lawyer or not? Or some of the things that have been mentioned already, if there's an externship available, an internship available. When I was in college at U of C, there wasn't such a thing, or I wasn't aware of it. So that's why I had to take the year off to go work for someone to make sure that that's what I wanted to do, even though I had this burning desire to be one. I'm very practical as a person, so I wanted to see, well, what would it be like day to day and work in a law office with lawyers, and what do they really do and how they make a living. So I saw that way. But now there's a lot of opportunities. You have chances to talk to lawyers like us and find out a little bit more about it. So if that's what you want to do, then by all means go ahead and do it because you want to become an attorney. But I'll tell you that the Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission that governs lawyers in Illinois, they report that there's about 94,000 registered lawyers here in Illinois. That's quite a few lawyers. There's not a lot of jobs available right now for people graduating law school. But you guys are very talented, and having gone to University of Chicago as an undergrad is going to help you later in life get jobs and get opportunities. But like I reiterate, don't squander your opportunity and go to law school if that's not what you want to do. And lawyers come in all shapes and sizes. I happen to be in private practice. You've heard government, you've heard academics. So there is a wide variety of lawyers, types of law you can practice. But I think you have to have the mindset that you want to be a lawyer before you go to law school. and take every opportunity you can to get some insight into that experience before you sign on to do it.
My position is that a law degree will benefit you no matter what you go into ultimately as a career path. There is no substitute for that incredible immersion into that intellectual exercise of what the law really means and how it affects us as a society and how we depend upon the rule of law in this democracy and the way we try to show it to the rest of the world, as imperfect as we are. Knowing where those imperfections are will carry you through whatever career you choose. So no, you don't have to be in a large law firm. You don't have to be in a small law firm. You don't have to be in a place where you are practicing law and interviewing clients and taking their cases or deciding whether you want to take their cases. You can use your law degree to great effect in anything that you choose to do. If you are so inclined, and if you feel like you have some international connection or some tug at your career inclination that is of international platform concern, pursue it. Now is the moment. When you heard, I believe it was Dean Boyer say that there was 79 countries that are represented in the entering class this coming year. It's unbelievable. The world is not going back to a jurisdiction-based world. It is global. It is now global. Your concerns, whether you practice law or whether you go into some other activity for a career, it will be international.
So I have a question that I'd really like to hear from both David and Chris on, since they both have worked for large offices that hire a lot of law students and new attorneys. What sorts of skills are legal employers looking for, skills and traits in people who are interested in either becoming a lawyer or are looking to make maybe a lateral move later in their career?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was good.
Oh, yeah. So, writing skills, I think you can't understate that enough. I am a trial lawyer. I go to court, I'm advocating in front of a judge or a jury. So I do a lot of stuff in court, but you can't understate the value of being able to write, whether that's your motions, whether that's a trial brief, whether that's you need to be able to write, and that skill will carry you so far. It really will. And as much as law school tried to kill my love of writing that I fostered in undergrad, it didn't entirely kill it, just mostly. But it's a much different style of writing than I had been used to doing in undergrad. I'd say that being able to write, whether you're an econ major or an English major, or if it's not behave sci now, it's psych, whatever your major is, you're writing, right? You guys all have to do BA theses now still, except, right? So you have to do those. It's a lot of writing. That's a great skill, and just keep that skill going, because you will use that. You'll use that certainly in the law, but you'll use that wherever you end up, in advertising or wherever you're
yeah,
at.
absolutely.
You will use that skill.
Fewer whole sentences, but
Right. That would be my the first thing I'd say. Carry you.
No, I think that it's definitely the main skill we're looking for. I mean, I think the other thing that we're also interested in is Frank, obviously you guys will say this is obvious, but public speaking, or just being able to kind of eloquently state what your position is or what your viewpoint is, or just some story, and I think that's important. You guys are all at a world-class university, right? I mean, in terms of getting interviews or being able to start that conversation, you're going to be able to do that. I think what we're looking for then is something that you're passionate about, something that's different, that you may have been interested in. And that, unfortunately, you may be surprised to hear this, maybe not. I always, when I was interviewing for a job, I would always ask every lawyer that I met, how'd you end up going to law school? Or why, what did you do before? And I have to tell you, and obviously not the people in this room, but the 90% of the stories I got were terrible. I mean, they were boring. I mean, they were just like, well, I just felt like I had nothing to do, so I decided to go to law school. I mean, and that's fine, but I think nowadays, because of the legal market and where it's at, I think employers are more interested in why you pursued that legal degree. Because if it's not spawning out of some kind of passion or some kind of story or internal conflict or drive that you have, it's going to sound awfully empty to the person sitting on the other side. So keep that in mind. And I think a lot of employers are going to be asking that question and really lending a tight ear. Even though their own story may not be that interesting, they're going to be looking for that.
I think Chris's point is really well taken. This idea, when I've talked to some of you and you said you're interested in government work or public work, and I think that's great that you guys have any idea what you're doing. Again, I did not, as a second year or third year, have much of a clue of what I was going to do. So I think that's good to have that. But when you are actually sitting down with an employer, I've done these, when we go out and recruit and do job interviews, I can't tell you how many times I've sat down and the student said, why are you interested in the state strings office? Why are you interested in being a prosecutor? Why are you interested in working at the AG's office? And they say, well, I'm interested in government work. I figured it'd be kind of a good place to start, and hopefully I could get a better job later. And then you kind of, yeah, I know, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. Right. You'd be stuck there. So make sure wherever you're interviewing that they are clear that you want to work for them. You don't want a job, you want that job. You want their job. That might seem very basic, but just be clear and I think what Chris said, make sure they know it's your passion, because that really can carry you far. Chicago will open the door for you, but you need to show the passion.
Okay, great. This is for anybody who wants to comment on it. Tell me something that either you would wish you'd known or that at least surprised you about being an attorney once you were actually in that role.
I wish I would have known how important connections were for when you become an attorney in helping you get a job, helping you get into law school, helping you get clients when you're an attorney. I guess I didn't know that. There wasn't this networking message that you now get at the college or in the law school. It was more just work hard, get good grades, it'll all work out. And now I'm finding, even later in life, that message, if I would have known it a lot sooner, would have made life even more enjoyable, if not more productive and successful, because everyone that you meet now, even in this room, is going to go on and do things, and it's going to be worthwhile to know them and keep in touch with them later in life. And it's funny how things circle back, but you do run into people later that you knew for some other reason early on, but you then didn't even put it together because it's amazing, like in my law school class that I teach, the students don't even really know each other. And so one of the things we do in the first class when we have extra time is like introduce each other to each other and say, meet the person sitting next to you, say hello to somebody you don't know in the class. It makes life better in the legal community, and it helps you get places that you want to get to. So I think that's pretty fundamental, but it's to make the connections that you can possibly make.
I would just like to add that during the time that I have been in the legal world, that it's the technology, the technological revolution that has taken place that is absolutely essential for you to be up to speed when you go out into the marketplace and to keep alert to what kind of opportunities exist for you to benefit from whatever expertise that they are making available to you when you are here at the University of Chicago and when you do choose the law school that you're going to attend.
Let me see. Something that I wish I'd known. Oh, there's so many. Well, you know, I entered law school in 07, and obviously the legal market was in a little better shape, I'd like to think. I don't think anyone's foresaw what was going to happen in 2010, although some blogs would say otherwise. I think, you know, had I known, one thing, I mean, that I didn't really know is that law school doesn't really teach you how to be a lawyer in some ways. I mean, and when I say that, I mean, like, I think analytically, you're going to learn about common law, you're going to learn about criminal law, and you're going to learn all of these things. But as a lawyer, kind of the tools and trade of like even filing a motion, you know, it doesn't necessarily teach you that. So it's really important that when you do go to law school, and I know the law school curriculum is changing in part because the firms and all sorts of companies are pressing upon them that they need to change their curriculum. You need to really put yourself out there in terms of wanting to either shadow attorneys, even when you're at the law school, and trying to understand what that work is really like. Because if you don't, you might find yourself coming out 3 years later, and then you won't. You know, I think I was joking with a colleague earlier that we said, you know what, you guys probably could do the work of, you know, a paralegal. If we assigned it to you, you probably could. In part because, you know, law school teaches you certain tools, but they don't necessarily teach you how to practice the law. And then secondly, I think the other thing that you should be mindful of is, even though I said, you know, when I went to Minnesota, I kind of had an idea I wanted to do pro bono law, it's kind of similar in college in that you're not necessarily going to get there unless you're relentless about it. It's because the legal market is such that a lot of law students will tell you, I'll take any job someone gives me. Now, I know that's the same answer some undergrads give me, but I mean, the fact is, though, the legal market is such where you may be passionate about bankruptcy law, employment law, but it's going to be a lot harder. Most of my friends who are now at firms or practicing whatever kind of law that they're practicing are practicing it now, and they have been, because that was what was available. And so if you have a particular mindset about like international law or civil rights law or whatnot, you need to really be sort of even thinking about that now. And start to make inroads as to kind of, that's the kind of law you're really interested in. One, to verify whether you're interested in it truly. But secondly, because the earlier you do that, the earlier it's going to be easier to answer that question when the interviewer goes, so why are you here? You know?
The number of things I wish I knew, I would only have till, I would avail myself, I would tell you to avail yourselves of all the opportunities that are available to you at that school. I did a little. I think I did some of the things. I had a great time my 4 years there at Chicago. I made great friends that I still have on both coasts. But there are programs. There are programs that are offered through the career offices. There are opportunities to work with professors in areas that you have. I wish that I would have known what a great school I went to when I was there. That I would have appreciated what a great school I went to even more. That I now going back, holy crap, that was a really great place. And there are some really great opportunities there. Avail yourselves of every one of those. And like Chris said, then when you're in law school, avail yourselves of those programs there to make yourself practice ready. Because I did leave the practice, government practice prosecution, and did criminal defense for a while. And it was staggering what I did not know about the practice of law, but the business of law on that side. So be open to all of those opportunities that are available to you. Take every one of them. Take every one of them.
And I would just like to, I mean, in terms of being out between, right? And I told this to a couple students earlier. I do think there's a kind of, you know, optimal point of being out. I don't think you want to be out too long. I mean, when I say that, I think it's, you know, 3 years is sort of the optimal point. I say that because the longer you're out, whatever you're doing, your skills are going to atrophy a little bit. And not atrophy in a bad way. It's just that your analytical tool set is going to sort of depreciate in a way, because you're going to be writing briefs about why McDonald's should kill Starbucks. I mean, you're going to be doing other things. And when you start doing that, your writing skills and your analytical skills might start to fade a little bit. So if you start to stay too long at a company, your responsibilities will start to go up. And you'll find that you're either very overwhelmed with the work that you have, or that when you go and start studying for the LSAT, or when that first year of law school hits, when you're reading all those cases that judges that write paragraphs, like sentences that are paragraphs, you won't be able to follow that as quickly as your peers. So, and that could hurt you because I mean, fact of the matter is, grades matter, and the first year of law school is looked at very closely by all the firms and all the companies. So, if you are going to be out, don't be out too long. I would almost even recommend that you take your LSAT as soon as possible, pocket the score, right? Because the LSAT goes for a couple years, and then do what you want to do, and then you've got the LSAT score ready already. So you don't have to worry and frantically try to repair your skills or find them again to do that reading comp, because you probably haven't read a reading comp like that in a long time, so.
Okay, so there's a lot of information out there in the media, the blogosphere, about whether or not a law degree is still valuable, whether or not there are jobs out there, and I do get questions about this from students. I'd like each of you to comment on that issue. Is law school still worth it, and if so, why?
I go back to my message of earlier, which I know some of you might disagree, that it's still worth it if you want to be a lawyer. If you want just to have a law degree because it's a good thing academically, or it'll help you with life skills and whatever you want to do, it's not going to be worth it. I think if you're struggling financially, if you have to get student loans, if your parents aren't paying for your education, quite frankly, because it's a lot of pressure when you come out of school if you have a lot of loans and you want to have a job that you can use the skills you just learned. And it is rough. With my students at Chicago Kent, many of them don't have legal jobs immediately after school, after they graduate. They've passed the bar. They have to take whatever job they can take just to make ends meet. They ask me if I have connections, if I know lawyers that are hiring. And for a time, it was really rough. I think it's getting a little bit better now. But for the rough time, the law clerks were lawyers. I mean, it was just kind of skewed. It was like, instead of a law clerk being a college student or college graduate, you had lawyers with law degrees acting as law clerks for firms just to get the experience. You had law schools that allowed you to keep going and get an LLM just because there wasn't a job ready for you after law school. So it was pretty dismal. It looks a lot better now, but we don't really know what it's going to be like if you were to enter law school now, what it's going to be like in 3 years, if things are going to continue to improve. But it is worth it to be a lawyer if that's what you want to do. And I love what I do. It's given me a lot of opportunity, a lot of skills to handle life's issues that they come up. It's been rewarding. But I would not say that go to law school if you don't know what you want to do. If you just say, well, it's a good thing, I'll get a law degree, I'm not sure ultimately what I'm going to do, it would be my strong opinion and recommendation that that it's not a luxury that most of us can afford. Just go to law school. If you want to be a lawyer, you'll find a way, you'll find a job. If you're relentless, you'll get a position doing eventually what you want to do. That's just my opinion, though.
My husband is a lawyer, and he has a job where he is the legal analyst for ESPN, and he is one of the happiest people I've ever met. And he enjoys it very, very much. It would not be possible if he did not have his law degree. In his case, it took him a while to decide he wanted to go back to journalism. And he was practicing for a while before he decided to make that major, major change. But if you know that you're interested in international pharmaceutical companies, if you know that you want to be a part of a federal agency that does the Food and Drug testing for whatever new medications or pathogens or whatever it is that's going to be coming along, whether or not you want to be involved in that. If you want to be involved with that legally, you can get a job at that agency and then find your way to the legal office if that is what you see as the thing you want to do. The law school career is something that has multiple uses throughout your lifetime. You can't even imagine them all at this moment.
I know I'm torn on it. I share Laurie's viewpoint in that I think a legal education is a very, very big decision. And I know, coming, when you're in college and you have all the monopoly money that, and you're not really thinking about it, it doesn't really strike you until you get that first student bill and you say, wow, how many zeros is at the end of that number? So it's a big commitment. And is it worth it? I think, again, and I won't, repeat what's been said. I think you really need to ask yourself how flexible you think that JD degree is, because most of my friends right now who've now have JDs and are no longer practicing don't really find much use for it. I don't think. I mean, and I think there's definitely the analytical value of it, but then you have to ask yourself, well, you got the JD to be a lawyer, right? So you could pass the bar and then practice. So without that, the JD then becomes kind of a 100 grand plus piece of document hanging on your wall. So not to say, again, that it doesn't bring other intrinsic value, and I agree that I think it does, but it's also a big price tag to pay for it. So, I think, if you want to be more flexible, maybe you want to try exploring like a JD MBA program, because I think the MBA is truly a flexible degree, whereas the JD sort of, if you're not a lawyer, then the JD is what it is.
It's an unfortunate reality that you guys face that I didn't face as seriously, that decision to make whether to go to law school or not. It shouldn't be this grave decision. I don't mean to make it this grave decision, but I think it is a weighty decision when you're talking about private school tuitions being what they are. And if you're going to have to borrow borrow student loans to make that happen, you have to keep that in mind. There's state schools, tuitions are going to be less, and maybe that's something that you say, you want to do that, go to a public university for law school, and that makes it more feasible or more reasonable. But they're all still expensive options. Is it worth it to do? I think, speak to Chris when Laurie said it, and if it is your passion, if this is what you want to do, you can find a way to make it work. And whether that is ultimately just hanging out a shingle and being just going out right on your own, right out of law school, which is not the most normal career path, but you can make it work. And there are young attorneys out there hustling and making it work. But if that's what you really want to do, and you can accept the financial obligation that comes with it, then I would encourage you to do it.
Okay, thank you. We've got about 5 minutes left before I want to turn things over to questions from the students. So if each of you could just briefly share with us your favorite and least favorite part of what you do day to day.
My favorite part is I've had an opportunity now with the Attorney General's office to go to different counties, go to different jurisdictions, and experience the law being practiced in these different venues. I got used to practicing in Cook County, Chicago area, and that's one kind of cowboy way of doing it. And then you go down to these other jurisdictions where it's a very genteel civil practice, and other ones where it isn't. It's a little bit more bare knuckles. But this idea that you can get that experience in the law, I've really enjoyed that. I've been able to take these skills that I have and go down to Mexico and train prosecutors there in trial advocacy, U.S. trial advocacy, or regular adversarial trial practice, as they switch their practice from an inquisitorial system to an adversarial system. If you are fluent in another language, that really can serve you well in your practice. That's been a great experience to expose them and to be exposed to these attorneys as they try and change their practice. What are the areas of what don't I like? I don't know, Chris. Bureaucracy.
Red tape. Yeah.
Red tape.
Yeah.
Red tape.
Right.
There's some of that in state agencies. Some of that in government. There's a little.
I think I don't know. It's
a little.
hard to find something. No, that's
A little.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that. But sometimes you bump into that.
Let me see, the favorite part. I think the part that I love about being with the government and the Attorney General's office is just the diversity of work. Because, during the short time that I was at Neil Gerber, I was in their general litigation group. And the thing is, you start to kind of specialize in a particular field. I had met one attorney whose entire business was airlines, and he wrote the contracts for the airline industries on all sorts of things. But it was very specialized. Versus when you're with the government, at least my bureau, although we work within kind of this one False Claims Act, all these cases are about different things. They can be about construction. They can be about some other government, like military contracts. I mean, they can be all sorts of different kind of fraud that's being put on the government. So it's that diversity of work is really nice. It makes sure that the next case that comes at your table could be a completely different novel. The thing that I would dislike about the law, thus far, unfortunately, I have to say it's probably like document review, e-discovery, and all that stuff. So when you serve subpoenas or get documents from the other side, and they come in with truckloads of documents for you to look at, and then you realize, wow, the bad part about being with the government is that I need to look at all that stuff. I think that's the hard part. And then the other thing, the side of the law that I think we get to avoid, Dave and I get to avoid, is the business of the law. But we get to see it on a day-to-day basis. Meaning, unfortunately, this doesn't always happen. But when we're up against some defense attorneys, we will see motions that perhaps don't need to be filed that are filed, work that perhaps needed to be done. And for whatever reason that might be, possibly billing. You get to see that, but that's the business of the law, and I think that again speaks to kind of the landscape of the legal market at this time. So it's something that you can't avoid. It's businesses. As an econ major, I can respect that. So it's part of the world of capitalism. But I think that side of it is something that again, and you're going to bounce between public and private practice likely. Most attorneys do. So you can't avoid it, but it's there.
I'll start with the least favorite, and that would be billing. In order to get paid by my clients, I have to keep track of my time. So I bill by the hour, so everything I do, it has to be documented in 0.10 increments. That's 6 minutes. So if I'm on the phone with the client, I have to write down or put in the computer, how long did I talk to that client? What was the billing matter? What was I doing? I have to account for my time. That's not so fun because, you see where big chunks of time go through your day, and you have to be disciplined enough to keep track of it, or you don't get paid for it. And then in the end, you give your client a bill. I bill monthly, every 30 days, send them a bill saying everything I did on their case, what day, how much time, in fractions of an hour. That's the least favorite part, keeping track of your time. My favorite part is the part where I get to go to court. I mean, that's what you see on TV. That doesn't happen all the time, or when it does happen, it's not for the reasons like you see. You're not always arguing your case in front of the judge and waiting for a decision on the spot. Often you're going to court. Most days I go every day, usually in the morning, and appear in front of a judge only to get the case continued for another status. I'm basically just saying, judge, in this case, I represent the plaintiff, I represent the defendant. This is what we did since last day in court. We did discovery, we reviewed documents, we did depositions. What did we do? We need more time to do it. I'm coming back. When do you want us to come back? Usually it's next month on a status. So a lot of the court appearances are just status. Sometimes you do have hearings where you do get to argue your point, your case law, your facts, but you don't always get a decision on the spot. Sometimes the judge takes it under advisement. Sometimes they write a written decision. They tell you come back to get it. But I would say by large, that's my favorite part, going to court, interacting with other counsel, hearing what the judge has to say, even if it's a routine court appearance.
1 minute?
1 minute.
Do I get one more minute? My least favorite part, I like starting with that, grant writing. It is an oppressive project. The second thing is not enough time to keep up because everything that comes in electronically. And it all has to be downloaded, it all has to be printed, and then you have to have time to read it, and then you have to have time to file it. And it is an incredibly, if we had twice as much time, it would be great. The thing that is my favorite part about teaching is when a student's eyes will light up because of some connection of what an assignment has meant in their personal life. There's nothing like it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Questions? Can do this. Okay. Tan jacket, yeah, right there in the middle? Yes, you, yeah, sorry.
Well, you touched on this a little bit during the panel.
Do you guys all hear? Because we
Yes.
have microphones in the middle. As long as you guys can hear, then you can stay where you are.
I know UChicago really emphasizes, especially the humanities, academic research. So, like as English majors, you probably do that. How do you find that now as a practicing lawyer, academic research has helped with legal research or what you do day to day? Or has it helped you, your skills that you learn, like has it helped you just in law school or in the past?
I definitely think the research skills and ultimately what you're doing with that research is rewriting. That served me well. And I joked about the law school killed that love of writing. It didn't. It did its best to. But that research skill, those research skills will serve you. I think whether you go into law or whether you go into other areas, they serve you throughout your career.
I think, not to, pound our own chest, right? But I think you guys are already so far ahead of the rest of the country, right? In terms of your abilities and your skill set. Because, I'm just reminded when I was in law school, when I took legal research, the legal research professor would start off and say, listen, I can't teach you guys the analytical skills. You guys learned that in undergrad. And it's true. A lot of the skill sets that you're going to end up going to law school for, you've already learned, and you already have them. So what are you going to necessarily learn more through law school? Probably not. You might learn what to research, but the tool set of your writing skills. Again, law school can't teach you how to write, right? As Dave said, it'll probably try to destroy your ability to write. But you've already got those abilities, and that you've honed here, which is why I think even when we were interviewing people, we'd always look at where they went to their undergrad, because that is really where the foundation comes from. The law school is important, but the undergrad is where you've really been able to embellish, be able to be surrounded by the people that, your peers. And that's why we always look at that. So I think in terms of the research skills, I think you're in fine footing already. And also I think with the technological advances that have gone on, you also find hopefully that it's gotten a little bit easier. It used to be a lot more
Just shepherdize a case.
Right. Now, like, Westlaw is becoming more like Google. Like, my dream is just that Google would buy out Westlaw, but that's not going to happen. Maybe you guys can make that happen.
Okay, so I was wondering, I guess this is more for Chris and David than anyone else, but I was wondering if you guys could maybe speak a little bit about just sort of the transition, particularly between like prosecuting and defense, but also coming from like a firm and then working for like at the state level.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't with the firm that long, but and I love the people there. I just perhaps maybe it's because I left kind of the business world because I felt like I wanted to do something, not to say again, it's perfectly fine representing business clients and whatnot, but I wasn't personally satisfying.
Thank you.
To me.
Thank you.
Right. So again, that's, I always land back on my econ major for justifying, that's for my view on that. But so I think the transition was, it's different. I mean, when you're at the firm, you're, like Laurie said, you're billing. For us, it was every 15 minutes what we were doing, and you're kept on a tight leash in a way because you have to bill a certain number of hours, right? Or the firm will likely let you go. That's how it works. And just because you're at the firm from 7 in the morning to midnight doesn't mean you bill that whole period. Okay, that doesn't mean, so you're only billing when you're actually on the clock working on a client on a call or actually writing a brief, which is in part why you're there so long. So, I think that transition, it's, you have your reasons for kind of shifting. I think for me, it was because I felt when I was in government, the work was more satisfying, but also the hours are a little bit more generous. They're more accommodating. And I don't want to say that shouldn't be your reason for wanting government work, but because there's obviously a huge difference in the pay scale, between, and so, my friends joke that I'm going down that scale rather than up the scale. But because of that, though, that also affords you the opportunity, I think. It's kind of how you value your time, if you value your time, and obviously you have a passion for the law. But for me, it was also because I have other passions. I like to read, I like to write, I like to, work on my graphic novel, things like that. So it's, I didn't want to be the law 24/7. And I think that's, the pursuit of the mind, pursuit of other things. So that's why I thought, not only was the firm life sort of suffocating in that way, but it also didn't allow me to do the other things that I think define who we are. So that's why I wanted to, that's why I transitioned to government.
I love being a prosecutor, I really do. I love representing the victims of crimes, of someone who's been wronged. It is, I think, the easiest job in the world in many ways to come in and say, we are, on behalf of the people of the state, there's U.S. attorneys here, on behalf of the people of the United States, on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois, we're here on behalf of the people. That's really, it's a great feeling to say that and to say against whoever it is, John Smith, Jane Doe, the criminal, the wrongdoer, and hold them accountable. It's a great feeling. On the other, so I really enjoyed doing that. So I did criminal defense work also. And what's the difference? Well, you're just on the other side of the bench, right? I mean, you're just on the other side of the table and you're advocating for the client. The only way the system works is if you have a zealous defense on the other side. It really doesn't work if you have a bad defense attorney on the other side. And so you do want to have a zealous defense and a good attorney on the other side. Chris said that private practice is more lucrative. Private practice can give you some flexibility, at least in criminal defense. I simply did not enjoy doing it. I did not enjoy the business. We've talked about the business of private practice. I did not enjoy the business of private practice. Being a prosecutor, I thought I knew all there was. I'd done jury trials, I'd done practice in front of all these judges, so I know how to be a lawyer. You don't know, talking about the practice of law, the business of law is difficult. And I had to develop that skill. Had I stayed with it longer, I probably would have developed it and been fine at it, and there's plenty of very good friends I have who are defense attorneys, who I go out to dinner, we laugh and joke, we try cases against each other, yell at each other, and then you go for a drink afterwards. And that's fine. That's good. I had an opportunity to go back and do prosecution, and I'm glad that I've done that.
Do you find there's a large difference in culture between attorneys working in different areas of the law or under different business models, you could say? So usually attorneys, you kind of talked about working in large groups. Do these, do things feel different? Do you find that you're working in one kind of area, working in a private practice, and there's a much different tone to the atmosphere in the job, whereas working as a prosecutor in the public sector, there's a different, work feels differently.
I come from the ad world, right, where you come in at 9:30 with wearing a baseball cap and a pair of jeans. So I understand. This was obviously a little bit of a different, approach. No, I hear you. There is a cultural difference, and I think even by firms you'll sense it. There's obviously kind of the very conservative firms. And I don't think all firms are that way. I think the firm that I was with, Neil Gerber, is renowned for their flexibility. They have, I think one of the firms with the most female partners, in the country. So they're very accommodating with all sorts, So it really is. It's different by culture, and I would say, even within, I don't know if there's that big of a difference though between the state government practice and private government practice. I don't know if there's that much of a difference. I think, equally, like Dave said, both sides are equally zealous about advocating for their clients and doing all the work. You're gonna have to, you'll find that every firm that you interview with, they're gonna give you different kind of answers to those questions, and you'll be able to sense it. I mean, during interviews, I sometimes ask the question, what's something that your firm did that's really interesting or out there? And based on some of those answers, I once got an answer from an associate that said, one of the coolest things we did was that my partner went into a restaurant and ordered everything on the menu. And I was like, that's not particularly all that cool. And I'm like, well, scratch that firm off the list. And it's those kinds of answers that you're going to get. Yeah, the whole menu, everything, more as a joke, and then made the waitress it's insane. But so it's you'll get those kind of versus you might get a completely different answer at a different firm. So
I think I could say something quickly. If you're going to work for a firm that goes to court and does litigation, that's going to be different than a firm or a practice where you do transactional work. And obviously one's more formal and one's more informal. One has more flexibility in terms of what you can wear and your hours. Others, like court, you have deadlines when your brief is due and you have to be in court at 9:30 and not later, and don't want to get there too early because you're wasting time. So that might be one way to answer your question, is depends on your practice if you're going to do litigation or if you're going to do transactional work.
I think the culture, Chris kind of talked about this, the AG's office is largely, we are the government, we're the state's lawyers, and so in many ways it is a civil firm. We have a much larger civil side than we do criminal side, and so in that ways it is kind of a civil practice, kind of a civil firm. It's a little more genteel than the Cook County State Attorney's Office, which was a straight up more prosecutor's office, where you're working with the police or you're working with criminals, or it's that was a little bit hairier, a little grimier, a little rougher, a little more vulgar. Mm-hmm. That's not to say all prosecutors' offices. The U.S. Attorney's Office is represented here, and they're definitely much more civilized than the Cook County State Attorney's Office is. So I won't knock all prosecutors.
In terms of the application process, if per se one of your skills is FaceTime and is face-to-face communication, how and when do you get a chance to express that and play that up during the application process to law school and in subsequent interviews when firms come to that campus and so forth?
Well, I don't know if it's changed that much since I applied, but I can tell you that not every law school asks for an interview. In fact, most law schools I think don't, right?
Yeah, it's changing a little bit.
Yeah, it is a bit. Again, as the actual reality starts to hit the institutions, that always takes some time. You guys are aware of that. So So as that kind of bleeds in, I think you'll see that change. But I think, for instance, I don't know if UChicago even interviews for their law school, but I know Northwestern
They
does.
started last year,
They did.
actually. Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that's an important part. I mean, that's going to be your best opportunity, obviously. Now, if you don't have that, then that's, I think, that all the more reason why, as Dave pointed out, writing skills are really important, but you need to really convey to the law school why you're interested. And this, I think, goes to the law schools as much as the employers. I think the law schools are really looking at that because there is that general sense going around that that a lot of lawyers tend to be miserable when you talk to them, and it's this sense. It's a sense that I'm getting as a younger attorney. I seem to be getting this sense when I run into defense counsel. No one seems all that happy. And it's something that the law schools are aware of. And I think the law schools too are looking more closely at kind of why you're applying, you know. So, and maybe that will change, but I know that's a reality given the legal market.
I can add just one thing to that. I think it's important that it's a good thing that the law schools are starting to interview applicants more. As somebody who worked in litigation trial firms for a long time and spent time in front of clients and juries and worked with people who did, I think those kinds of skills are very important. So I'm glad to see that I think the law schools are starting to look at that a little bit more, but it's still very much a numbers-driven academic record kind of focus. Okay, looks like we've got our next panel wrapping on the door, so I'd like everyone to thank our panel for coming today.